Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back to another Lakeside chat on the beautiful Lake Washington in Seattle, Washington. Again, these are influenced by the Grateful Dead Lake chats that you've probably seen around of David Lemieux, who does these wonderful presentations of upcoming Grateful Dead live sets. So, thank you, David. Don't know you, but you're up here somewhere. I think you might be up towards Vancouver, the Canadian you are, I believe. But I picked 5 records here today, and these are all from June and July of 1975, so they just are celebrating the 50th year. A couple of these are major hits, album-oriented rock hits, the kind of boomer hits, the classic rock tunes that you've heard many times. A couple have bubbled under, and one record in particular has been something that's infamous maybe for the wrong reasons or for the right reasons, depending on your point of view. So I want to start with an album from a band out of San Francisco. I think they moved from Arizona originally, but they really kind of grew in San Francisco. Art rock, glam rock, an amazing band, and their debut to me is their best. Not their biggest selling. They would switch later to Capitol Records and have a major MTV hit, but I think this is the essence of this group and the brilliance of this group. This is the debut album by the Tubes. This was produced by Al Cooper, and what a great art rock band, led by Fee Waybill on vocals, Bill Spooner on guitar, Roger Steen on the great guitar as well. And of course there was Vince Welnick, who also was on keyboards for the Tubes. He would later join the Grateful Dead in the last few years, up until the death of Jerry Garcia. Michael Cotton keyboards, and the artistic combination of Michael Cotton and Prairie Prince, a powerful drummer, great studio drummer in his own right, worked on a lot of amazing records. They did a lot of the cover art here. You have Ree Styles, I believe that's Ree Styles, who would perform with the band and join the band. Jane Dornacher would join the band later, I believe on their second album, but would perform with them live. They played a month at Bimbo's 365 Club in San Francisco. I went 2 or 3 of those nights way back, and they had this wonderful, amazing performance. This is an incredible record. It's not only art rock, there's a little bit of prog here. And just, it's a bombastic record with great hooks and great lyrical content, amazing arrangements. Up from the Deep, the opening track, is really kind of a really cool prog-like introduction. And it's kind of crazy in a certain way. And it's got a lot of dynamics in it, in its arrangements. And it sets the tone, but it sets the tone for something you don't expect, because there's a lot of pop on here. Halos is another beautiful in the prog, very 70s-like album, something a little more courageous for a band like this. But then it goes into Space Baby, an anthem, hooks, should have been a hit, and of course ends with a cover of Malagueña Celeroso. Beautiful record. Good. Again, great arrangements on this record. A wonderful tour de force by the Tubes. I think an unheralded band that has sort of a niche, but people are more into their later records like Remote Control and that. Side 2 starts with Mondo Bondage, perverse sexual overtones in their recordings, that whole glam androgynous thing. Of course, Fee Waybill's personas change throughout their live sets as well as this album. What do you want from life? Another great song, great hooks. Radio-friendly hooks, at least on the West Coast, at least in San Francisco area. Boy Crazy, and of course, their anthem, I think maybe their greatest achievement, but doesn't necessarily reflect what they're about. White Punks on Dope, a perfect sort of teen angst rock and roll number that really sets the pace here. A&M Records, not a major seller. It sold a lot in the Bay Area. I just think this is a great debut. The Tubes, A&M Records. A game changer, the Bee Gees' main chorus. Now this is when the Bee Gees really started going for that R&B sound, away from the pop psychedelic, the pop hooks, the beautiful harmonies they were doing. They started raising their voices, getting a little more in the higher range, the falsetto range, which would be a trademark and really break them bigger than ever a year or two later with Saturday Night Fever, those songs. This was recorded mostly in Miami at Criterion Studios, so it has that kind of Miami Beach soulful sound, blue-eyed soulful sound, produced by Ira Martin. Some of it was recorded in New York as well. Nights on Broadway. This is a great record, jive talking. Nights on Broadway. It brought the band back and gave them hits again. Now, I'm a fan of their 1967 psychedelic masterpiece, the first proper album, at least recorded in London. Of course, they had some songs they recorded when they had immigrated from the Manchester area to Australia. That first album with Holiday and New York Mind Disaster is amongst my favorite pop psychedelic records of the 1960s. But Main Course, a great soulful, blue-eyed soul, funky record. Had that Miami sound, the strings, the arrangements. Killer record here. Now another record that was massive and broke this artist commercially, and this is a promo copy I got in 1975, and this was a spaceman's rock classic, radio friendly, a lot of synthesizers, electronics, but great pop hooks and very melodic, and that's Gary Wright's Dreamweaver. He had worked a lot with George Harrison, a lot of other artists, great keyboard player, but this is the song that broke him, and he kind of never, I want to say never recovered from this. He's not a one-hit wonder by any stretch, but that was a song that really kind of bookmarked him, or actually, put that really exclamation mark on his catalog, on his songwriting. Dreamweaver, promo copy from 1975. It was a great hit, Warner Brothers Records. Fleetwood Mac was, I think, the only group that changed every musician over the years, except for the rhythm section of Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, and could still have a sound, still have a hit. And that is Fleetwood Mac's 1975 self-titled, quote, debut. This is the record that made a lot of people aware of Fleetwood Mac who had no idea who Fleetwood Mac was or is. This is when Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham joined the group. This is where they really solidified that California sound. Of course, Bob Welch had been in the band, another American, but they were mostly a British band. And through all their incarnations, and I like them all. I still prefer the Peter Green, but I like that sort of what I call the middle period with Bare Trees and Future Games. That to me is an exquisite version of a mix of California and British, and away from really the sound of Peter Green and the real bluesy sound, although that is still my favorite. But this is produced by Keith Olsen and Mick Fleetwood. Keith Olsen gave it a real tight sound, and of course the percussion and the rhythm section really kind of sets this stage here. But I remember this coming out when I worked at the record factory, and every time a Fleetwood Mac album came out, I'd open up and play it literally out of the box, slap it on the turntable in the store. From Mystery to Me, Heroes Are Hard to Find, all those records when I was working in stores. And I remember opening this one, and it looked a little different. I hadn't heard that they had new members, but they kind of always had new members every few albums, so it didn't surprise me. But I put it on, and that song Monday Morning, the way that sounded, it had hooks that their previous albums maybe didn't have in the same way. Of course, Hypnotized was somewhat of a mild hit, that Bob Welch song on Mystery to Me. But then you get into all these songs, and Rhiannon, Stevie Nicks. Now, I wasn't right off a big fan of Stevie Nicks. I like Christy McVie's sound, that soulful kind of R&B sound that she would bring to the band a little bit, and her keyboard playing. But then I realized there was something about this album that was different. Over My Head, the McVie song, was maybe my favorite album initially on this. And of course, but you have these great songs by Stevie Nicks, Landslide and Rhiannon, and just a mix of things. And I really liked how they traded off with all these songwriters and vocalists. I mean, they had 3 strong vocalists with Stevie Nicks, Lindsey Buckingham, and Christine McVie. And I just like the harmonies they had, the hooks they had, and I just love this version. Unfortunately, later versions, when one artist or one of the 3 members would leave and the other 2 would fill in, I like it when they all share things. I mean, even later, the album where Christine McVie is not on, I was disappointed because as much as I like Stevie Nicks' singing, I get a little tired of her voice on a whole album. That's why I was never been a big fan of her solo records. But I think this is a nice hybrid. And of course, we know the next album, Rumors, became this massive hit, one of the biggest selling albums of all time. And I think, Fleetwood Mac obviously was possibly, along with the Eagles, the biggest band of the 1970s. And so it's easy kind of to attack them and to go after them and to maybe kind of not realize the importance of them. But in the 1970s, that was the biggest decade of album sales. And it was because of bands like Fleetwood Mac, the Eagles, Peter Frampton, Linda Ronstadt, obviously the biggest female vocalist selling in the 1970s. So that Fleetwood Mac album, important album. You've all heard it. It's been reissued a million times. It's an album that probably should be in everyone's collection. Literally that and Rumors I couldn't listen to for about 30 years because they were overplayed constantly in record stores and radio in the 1970s, 50 years ago. And finally, an album that I was going to say needs no introduction, but I think it needs a reintroduction. And this is a record people love to hate or hate to hate or love to hate or hate loving it. I've grown to appreciate it for what it is, but it's a record that is totally the flip side of that Fleetwood Mac album, totally an opposite record, needs a reintroduction, and that is from 1975. And this is a promo copy, and this is Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music. Now, experimental album. This is like basically shoving it in your face, saying, fuck you, I'm gonna put this record out. A double record on RCA Records. What the fuck was he doing here? But it is a bombastic record. It's a noise record. It's an ambient record. It's distortion. Now, no synthesizers, but there are various effects with guitars and preamps and tube equipment and things that he played with at the time. And it's something that was, I think, become very influential. He was influenced by a lot of experimental artists. He was playing around in the studio, just did these noisy things. And for years, I couldn't listen to this record. And about, 5-6 years ago, I had the CD box that came out of Lou Reed. And I put this in the car, decided to take a drive when I was going down to Portland, Oregon. And I put it on, and I finally got it. I realized when is the appropriate time for this. Now, this isn't a party record. This isn't a record to lift your spirits. This is a record just to kind of experience and feel. It's problematic. It's not for everyone. It's not that I'm trying to be hip to saying I like this record. There's sometimes this record disgusts me, and I think, oh, the audacity of someone to put a record like this. Now, I did get the record store day with the Diver cover release, and again, I think it's an interesting album, and it's an important album just because when it came out, the time it came out, 50 years ago, amongst all these commercial hit records, the Bee Gees, Gary Wright. Maybe the Tubes wasn't a hit, but at least it was accessible and had hooks and had potential. This was like, what the fuck is this about? Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music. But think about this. In a 4-week period, all these albums came out, and they affected musicians and bands and artists for the duration after this. And very influential, all these in a certain way. So thanks for watching Mazzy by the Lake on this Friday. Mazzy loves you.